for me, the confidence comes in the doing, knowing who you are. Like, I'm connected to the Almighty God. Okay. So everything is working out in my favor. Whatever happens in this situation, I'm going to win.
Hey guys, happy Wednesday. Welcome back to another episode of Quality Queen Control. Guys, today I have a powerhouse guest with me, somebody who is truly transforming the way that coaches, consultants, and experts show up in their business, Maya Elious, okay? She is a business coach and messaging strategist who helps entrepreneurs, especially Black women of faith, break through mindset blocks, master their messaging, and attract high-value clients with confidence. Too many times, talented business owners struggle to articulate their value, but Maya simplifies the process so that they can market and sell without any confusion or feeling overwhelmed. What makes her unique is actually her ability to take complex strategies and make them clear, actionable, and even fun. No fluff, just real talk and real results. So in this episode, we are going to be taking a deep dive into two game-changing topics: the messaging mistakes that keep coaches and consultants stuck under 100K, and the mindset shifts around faith and confidence that leads to more clients and cash. If you've been struggling to position yourself as a high-value expert or doubting whether you're ready to charge what you are worth, this conversation is exactly what you need. Welcome, Maya, to Quality Queen Control. So, Maya, I am very, very curious to learn about the genesis of how you began in coaching, and also specifically how you began in faith-based, coaching and getting those high value clients. I really want to learn about that. So tell me a little more.
Yeah. So I've been coaching for a decade now. I started in 2014 coaching. But prior to that, I started in the branding space in 2008. I was helping people build their brand essentially on MySpace when MySpace was very popular. So I worked with a lot of like music artists, models, reality TV stars. And at the time, I didn't know I was helping them build their brand. I actually had no concept of what the word branding was or what a brand was, but I knew that people wanted to look good online and they were trying to portray a certain image, which is kind of essentially what your brand is, right? You're trying to build this reputation, and then eventually your brand becomes what other people say it is, but you get to manipulate and control that a little bit. And I don't say manipulate from a negative standpoint. I know that word tends to have a negative connotation, but it's really just what can I do to kind of shape the outcome that I'm looking for? And so starting there, so MySpace pages, then websites finally got popular and people were like, I want to have my own platform. I want my own website. And then I recognized that my clients were spending a lot of money on the pretty things, right? We love aesthetic. As I mentioned, it's one of my, top core values. And I think that is really how I got into design. I really wanted beautiful people to be represented well online. So I'm like, let's make sure you get a photo shoot. We have the graphics, the logo, the colors, the fonts. But there was still a disconnect and a gap between having a pretty presence and converting it into money. And what I recognized is that my clients would want websites, but they're like, I don't actually know what to say on my website. It was just a bunch of words. And so those words weren't correlating into clients and into people interested working with them. And so that is how I found my gifting and messaging, because clients would be like, hey, I need help with what to say. And so because I work with a lot of experts, people who are really brilliant. They've been in their field for quite a while, for 5 years, 10 years, 15, upwards of 20 years. And they speak at this like high level expert jargon where only their peers would be able to understand it. And that's a huge mistake that I see with experts. You're speaking at a peer level versus speaking at a level where people who would want to work with you and better understand what you do could not understand it. And so that's really how I found my gifting in messaging, helping my clients with their copy. And then I eventually started just coaching them with strategy on how to drive traffic to their website, how to get clients, how to describe their offers.
I love that you were talking about your clients were focused on the pretty things, but it is, even being in social media, it is so different actually converting your audience into paying customers. And that is something that I feel like you can only really understand if you have an entrepreneurial mindset, or if you are entrepreneurial in spirit. Once you try to sell something, whether that be merch or anything, you all of a sudden realize, wait, there's a conversion issue.
Yeah.
And this is something that I feel like, I mean, depending on what type of social media influencer you are, you may not encounter this issue. But when it comes to even brand deals, you kind of do on a small scale, because converting that audience that you have into paying customers for whatever it is that you're selling is going to matter.
Yeah.
And so it is so important having a strong message. Personally, to be transparent, I feel like that's something that I have really kind of struggled with, or I am currently struggling with, because I am very entrepreneurial and there's so many things that I want to do, but I'm finding that turning my audience into paying customers is a lot different. People want to look at you for free as a personality, but they don't necessarily want to actually buy what it is that you are selling. So honestly, you're here, like we were saying earlier, really for me, and everyone else is just watching, because this is just so on point. Now, just backtracking a little bit about your upbringing. How did you really get into like faith and, getting to know God and kind of meshing that into your business?
Yeah. So, I mean, I grew up in a Christian household, which I'm really grateful for. So it was always just the foundation of who I am. And merging it into my business, it wasn't even something that I did intentionally. It was just something that happened organically. And I think sometimes people could make the assumption, or maybe we see it sometimes now, I would say maybe within the recent years, where it could seem like, are they just telling people that they're faith-based? Like, is this a strategic thing? And I'm like, it was never a strategic thing for me. I didn't even start using the term faith-based until my audience described it like that. And that's a huge part of messaging, where you start using languaging that your audience uses because that's what they resonate with. And so when I was still a web and graphic designer and building my brand, building my personal brand, I would blog and I would just talk about my everyday life, and I would mention God, and people would be like, you're so brave to mention God. And I'm like, really? I'm just talking. It was so normal to me. And I guess it was a little bit, back then it was taboo to talk about your religion. It was taboo to talk about money. And I talked about all those things. I would talk about how much money I made. I would talk about what I learned at church. I would talk about what I felt like God was telling me. And people just really connected to that level of transparency and vulnerability. And I think one of the biggest things that's allowed my brand to grow is that people actually felt like they knew me. Like I wasn't trying to be a public figure. I was simply being myself. And I happened to build my brand to where I became a public figure. And so the faith-based aspect, I say I work with women of faith. I wouldn't describe my business as faith-based coaching. It is strictly business. Excuse me. It is strictly business coaching. I just don't hide my faith aspect into it. And so we're going to pray at my events. We're going to pray on these coaching calls. We're going to reference scripture if we need to. But it's just so organic. It's not a strategy to connect with people. It's just simply who I am.
I love that. And I feel like even for myself, that's how I would describe, I made the pivot in the past year to start being more vocal about my faith. And so as I was making that transition and talking about those things, I was very vocal about trying to find how I wanted to go about presenting that I was that way without necessarily being labeled as a faith-based content creator. Because it's like, I'm not a faith-based content creator. I just am a content creator that is vocal about my faith.
Exactly.
So I completely, I resonate with that a lot. Like, so when it comes to the messaging mistakes that coaches and consultants make, I'm sure you've seen it all. What are the biggest messaging mistakes that you see coaches and consultants make that keep them stuck under 100K? Because I see oftentimes online, everyone's talking about the, making the six figures and even like 6-figure months and all these different things. And it almost seems unbelievable. But I've quickly learned, even just tapping into this community a little bit, that this is a very real thing. And getting people, and the thing is, you don't even have to have a ton of followers even to do it, which is even more shocking.
Yeah.
So I'm very curious to discover, like, what are those messaging mistakes that you see coaches and consultants make?
So when it comes to messaging, the two areas where I'm helping my clients, the first area is getting clear. Do people clearly know what you do? And the second area is, do they then know the value of what you do? Because those are the two things. And so when it comes to messaging, your messaging should be able to answer three questions. Who are you? Who do you serve? And how do you serve them? And quite often we're missing the mark on at least one of those three, or maybe two of the three, or just all three. It's like, girl, we don't even know what you do. We don't even know why people should be paying for this. And so typically what I'll see is, one, when it comes to answering the question of who are you, I look at two things. A lot of women, and I'll say women because that's who I primarily work with. I imagine men probably deal with this too. It's hard for them to talk about who they are because they don't want to seem like they're bragging, especially women of faith who just want to be so humble. And it drives me crazy. I tell my clients, listen, let's not worry about humility right now. Let's can you get some money? Okay?
Yeah.
We'll figure out the humility part later. Because I'm like, this fake humility is really, truly, honestly holding them back.
Yeah.
And so being able to answer the question of who you are can be challenging because they're like, well, one, I don't want to seem like I'm bragging. And I'm like, well, let's reframe this. How about we don't think of it as bragging and we just think of it as positioning, right? If you were going to a job interview, you would need to brag on yourself, or you would need to come forth with your resume, essentially, which is what positioning is in business. How do I position my expertise in front of the right people so I can get the job or get the client? So talking about who you are from the human side, your personality, what are some of the things you're interested in, and then talking about who you are from the expert positioning side. How long have you been in your field? What are the type of results you've been able to get for yourself or for other people? And so that's the first thing. I also think it's challenging for a lot of women to answer that question because I really believe that one of the number one things that the enemy is after is our identity. That's why there's so much confusion. And if you truly knew who you were and what God called you to do, you would be so excited to tell the world about it.
Wow.
But we are so confused about who we are. We're confused about what our calling is. We're confused about why we matter. And so it feels so foreign to talk about who we are.
Yeah.
And so typically what we do is we shrink who we are. We don't want to talk about it. So just being able to truly understand who you are is really, really big in messaging. Then the second thing is, who do you serve? And one of the biggest mistakes when it comes to answering the question of who you serve is eliminating that fear of leaving money on the table because you believe you can help everybody. My clients, y'all have such great hearts, but you wanting to help everybody is going to keep you broke. The reason is because everybody relates to information differently. And so business advice and business strategy is quite universal. I mean, business is really just a formula. You have a product, you price it for profit, you sell it to enough people, and you make sure that you're bringing in more money than you are putting out. It's very simple. Now, how I relate to my clients looks different. How I have conversations and relate to my clients as Black women of faith is going to look different than I'm working with a white male who doesn't believe in Christ. It's just different. We're going to relate differently. The information of business is still true, but that's why who you are matters, because how you relate to people is what builds that level of trust. Are they going to trust the information that I'm giving them based on how they relate to who I am? This is why building your personal brand is important. So when we're answering the question, who do you serve? You want to think about, who am I best designed to serve? Who am I most likely to connect with? Who is the audience that trusts me the most? And I remember when I was, starting to get really serious on my audience, and I was still doing web and graphic design, just trying to figure out who is my ideal client. And I had interned for a company that was where I learned a lot about corporate branding. And so for me, I'm like, oh, okay, well, maybe corporate branding is my specialty. Maybe my ideal client is corporate white males between the ages of 40 to 55. And it's like, girl, what corporate white men do you know? You just casually hanging out with all these white men that are going to just trust you and give you money? No. When I looked at my PayPal, because that's what I was using at the time, and I looked at who was consistently paying me, it was Black women who ran purpose-driven businesses or nonprofits, and they were between the ages of 30 and 45. And that's who I figured out, like, this is who trusts me. These are the people commenting on my blogs. These are the people who are sending me emails. These are the people asking me for advice. These are the people paying me. Wow. So pay attention to who's paying attention to you. And that's really who your audience is going to be. Wow. And then the last thing is, how do you serve them? Truly understanding what is your value to them. And so when I'm looking at value, teaching my clients how to position the value, two of the things we want to look at is we need to look at who we're serving, and what we need to understand about our audiences. What are their biggest pain points and what are their biggest desires? Because your offer, your expertise, your product should be helping them to eliminate or alleviate their pain point and then get them closer to their ultimate desire. And that is how you are measuring value. So if I have a conversation with a black woman, a woman of faith, but she has no desire to build a 6 or 7 figure business, she's not an ideal client. So when we think about our audience, we think about demographics. You know, she probably lives in New York. She has 3 kids. She has all of that. Does she deal with the pain points of your ideal client? Does she have a desire to do whatever it is that your product can do for her? So those things matter as well.
Wow. That is just gems. Okay. Like, those are gems already. And honestly, when I even think about the pain points and things like that, what would you say is the main thing that gets people to jump and actually pay? Because sometimes, you ever heard that quote that says you attract the customer you are? And I find that I study my own behavior patterns of, like, okay, whenever I want to do something, I like dance around it. I put in the cart, and then I'm going to come back. And I think to myself, like, what would make someone jump if I were to offer something? And so going back to the messaging of it all, I'm thinking, all right, let's just say somebody wants to start and get into this type of coaching business, specifically myself. Yeah. Starting from even social media. Oftentimes people say to me, oh, girl, like, it's going to be easy for you. You've already built a personal brand. Yeah. So it should be really easy. But then I'm thinking, like, man, who would my audience really be, you know? And so you just answer that question for me of, like, wow, who are the people that are talking to me the most, you know? And really leaning into that, really leaning into those pain points. So how can entrepreneurs simplify their messaging to attract those high value clients?
Yeah. So it does come down to being very, very clear. And, you know, when it comes to getting your audience to say yes, I look at a couple things. I've looked at patterns, you know, over the last decade of my clients who said yes and my clients who have had success. And my clients who have had the most success and the ones who like paid on the spot, they already came to me clear and sure. And I always say, your ideal client is looking to part ways with their money. This is not somebody that you have to manipulate. This is not somebody that you have to convince. Now, there's going to be a level of positioning and sales psychology, of course, and everybody is also going to be at different stages. So some of my clients that are like, girl, I already know, take my money. They've decided already, I want my outcome to be this. They're so clear on what they desire. They've researched what they need to do or the type of person they need to hire. And then they studied me to make sure that I was the person they needed to hire. So there's different elements to that. And that's why positioning and remaining consistent is really important, because some people will say, well, I've actually been following you for years and you've been talking about the same thing over and over and you've been consistent. Then there's some people who they might not know that they're going to hire me, but they do know, you know, I do want to build my business or whatever it is. Some people are what they call solution aware, and then they know what the solution is. They're just figuring out who they want to get that solution from. And then some people are problem aware. I'm aware that I have a problem. I don't know what the solution is. And that is where positioning and content again can come into play, where then you're creating content around their specific problem and you're telling them what the solution is. And they're like, oh, this makes sense. I didn't know that I needed messaging. I kept thinking that I just needed to pump out a bunch of content, or I just thought that I needed to magically slap a price point on my offer and that people would buy. And so that's when we're thinking about how do we get people to buy. that's really what we want to consider. How am I positioning the solution, and how am I letting people know that I understand the problem? Now, when it comes to getting high quality clients know that they want to make an investment. High quality clients are not like, should I do this? Should I not? They're just living in fear all of the time. High quality clients are not the ones who are in your DM every single time you launch saying, I'm saving up for you. I'm saving up for you. And, and it's not even me, necessarily poking fun or trying to demean people who do that, because I think everybody operates in their own level of fear for whatever reason. But I look at people and I look at how much time is being wasted because of the fear.
Yeah.
And I look at, my offers range between $1,000 to $20,000, just depending on where you want to work with me. And so I know, like, the $20,000 clients, they operate a little bit differently, because at this point, typically maybe $20,000 is not going to be their first investment. When I look at the $1,000 to $5,000 clients, that might be their highest level of investment in their first investment. So they're kind of going back and forth and trying to figure it out. And so when these clients will apply to work with me, and then they'll come back 6 months later, like, am I ready? And then another year later. And I'm thinking, in 1 year, 2 years, you didn't manage to save $1,000. You didn't manage to save $5,000. And again, this is not judgment, because I'm not saying this from a place of I feel entitled to anybody's money. I'm looking at what you're saying you prioritize based on the actions of you actually prioritizing it. And so if I know that I desire something, we figure out the money to get to a Beyonce concert. We figure out the money to pay our rent. We figure out the money. I've seen people who will say, like, yeah, I really want to build my business, but, blah, blah, blah. And then again, this is not knocking anybody. I'm trying to create a clear picture of, I've seen people make a way for things that they did not communicate was as vital or important. So I'll see people say, like, I want to build my business, I just don't have the money right now. Cool. I'm a no pressure person. You get on a call with me. My only role is to see if I can help you, not to figure out what's going on in your pockets, because that's not my responsibility. But then, like, 6 months later, they're pregnant, which is such a beautiful thing, starting your family. What I know for sure is that kids are expensive.
Period.
I know that kids are more than $1,000 a year.
Yeah.
More than $5,000 a year. They're probably $35,000 a year minimum. And so I'm like, if you can figure out what sacrifices to make sure that your kid is good, which you should as a parent, right? That's 100% your responsibility. Why could you not figure out and do what you needed to do for something you said that you truly desire, something that you said God has been putting on your heart, something that you said you've been wanting to do for the past 5 years. And so I just take a look at people's patterns. It's no judgment, but I'm very observant, because I'm a coach and I like to look at patterns.
I love that you mentioned that. And I can honestly say, I've here and there done a couple trainings with like people and trying to figure out, as being someone that aspires to get into the coaching space. And I think oftentimes when I'm, playing the other side, I think it maybe also boils down to trust. Is this truly going to be something that's worth it? One of the things recently, because I made an investment in something, and what made me like jump and be like, I'm just going to do it, was the fact that oftentimes we hear like, you need to invest in yourself. You need to invest in yourself. And that is true. But it's like, what about the circumstances for people that like actually really can't do it? Like you're 60K in debt, in your credit card. And honestly, there was a young lady who told a story, and she was like, yes, I was in debt and I did it anyway. And it ended up working. Yeah. And that story really just made me jump, because I'm like, okay, that makes sense to me. Yeah. As opposed to someone that, they're like, you have to invest in yourself. It's very important to like, do what you say you're going to do. Yeah. But it's like, okay, did you have the money and you just didn't want to do it? Or did you not have it and you did it anyway? Like, which one really was it? And so what inspired me was knowing that this person didn't even have it and they jumped anyway. Yeah. And it ended up really working out for them. Yeah. So I think that it really does boil down to, the trust of, man, am I going to be able to see a benefit from this investment that I'm making? Because oftentimes, you hear like horror stories of people that have these programs, because everyone sells different things. And what you coach in is just so unique, and it is so valuable, because you can't go wrong with it, you know? And everyone, like I said, does different things in different spaces as it pertains to coaching. But I've always found it's that trust of like feeling like, man, this investment, I don't know if it's really going to actually work out for me. Is someone going to, just, ghost me? Or there was like someone that was pitching me to do coaching, and I was like, I want to do it, but then I really wanted to talk to them one-on-one. And I think sometimes people also get disappointed maybe at times because they feel like, all right, if I'm investing this money, this like $5K, I want to make sure that I have access to you directly. But then you're getting like their assistant and then like this and all these different things. And, you can't do everything yourself, especially if you have a range of, clients that you are, you're working with at a different price point. But again, like everything you're saying is highlighting to me that messaging is so important, because what even puts you at ease of, okay, you're going to have to go through tier 1 of this. And then eventually as you graduate, maybe we'll do like a weekly group coaching call or something like that. But I just know that on the other side, before someone is making that big investment, there is the fear of what if it doesn't work?
For sure.
Yeah. And then I'm thinking on the opposite side, as a coach, you're nervous, like, I really hope this person sees an ROI, and that's why it is so important, like you said, to know your identity, because there is a little bit of that imposter syndrome. Like, dang, I mean, I know I am charging a bit much, like they, and you do kind of want to give it away for free or like help the world. So everything you're saying is so amazing. So can you share an example of a client who transformed their business by refining their messaging?
So I have so many examples, but I want to speak first to before people are making their investment. Cause I think you've made some points where it's like, there's some people, it's like you have it and you just don't spend it, but still they'll tell themselves they don't have it. Then there's people who are like, well, I'm $60,000 in debt, but they made it happen anyway. And everybody's risk level is different, right? This is the game of investing. I think a lot of people, one, they don't look at themselves as investors. So that's already a problem to begin with. And two, they don't look at themselves already as CEOs or entrepreneurs. So that's also another problem. If you're simply looking at yourself as maybe a 9-to-5er or a consumer or somebody who has a hobby. And so you have to just, again, everybody's risk level is different. There's not a right or wrong, but I have seen clients who, and I remember somebody tried to criticize me for this. I've seen clients who have taken money out of their like 401k or something. They made an investment and they got an ROI. And whether or not they got an ROI, that was their decision to make. I would never say out of my mouth, hey, do you have money in a 401k so you can pay me? I'm just not that desperate for money. I am going to charge what I need to charge because I know the value of what I'm getting, but I'm not going to tell people what they should risk. That's their decision. And so what I tell my clients, who sometimes they're afraid to charge high ticket, they're afraid to sell, is that some of our fear of selling is because we are crossing boundaries, meaning we're over concerning ourselves with what somebody has in their bank account, when the only thing we need to be concerned about is, are we providing the value of the dollar amount that we are asking for? Whether or not you have $7,500 to be in my program is not my responsibility. That's your responsibility. What I know for sure is that people leave my program and they make $7,500 over and over and over and over again. And part of the messaging is having endless testimonials, because part of your messaging is positioning. Part of your positioning strategy is having other people say what you're great at and the results that they've been able to get, other than you being the only person to say it. And so I think that's where, some people get nervous about the, charging. It's like, the price is the price and here are the results. And that's just kind of where we're at. And so, yes, as a coach, I desire for my clients to get an ROI. I've become a little bit less detached from it because I also know that my formulas work and that my strategies work, but the person has to also work. And so typically if somebody were to ever come to me and say like, Maya, this didn't work, which I don't know the last time I really gotten a complaint with any of my programs. But if somebody were to come to me, I would examine, tell me the work that you did. What did you do? And we would see like gaps of like, well, you did do the webinar, but you didn't use the exact framework that I gave you. Or you did send out emails, but I told you to send out 12 emails and you sent out 4. And so there's usually a gap in consistency or 100% implementation. Shoot, even if you do 85% of what I tell you to do, you're going to be pretty solid. But then I see you did 50% of the work, but you wanted 100% of the results. And so as a coach, you have to learn how to find that balance of like, yes, I truly desire for my clients to be successful, but they have to desire it as well. And one of the things that I say is every desire is tied to a discipline. So if you're not disciplined enough to actually do the work, don't expect to see your desires come to fruition.
Wow. I love that. I really, really love that. And I also saw a quote. Someone said, if you want to enter into the land of phenomenal, you have to leave the land of familiar. And so growth really does. And I'm in that season in my life right now of like growth and extreme uncomfortability. So it's like I'm finding that I'm making the most investments and I'm just like, I'm just going to jump. I'm going to leap. And so I can definitely say like that really resonated with me. That is amazing. What are some common misconceptions about high ticket sales and the messaging? What are some misconceptions about it?
I think some misconceptions with high ticket is that just because you put a high price on it, that people are going to buy, or that you're all of a sudden a high ticket coach. And I guess you could deem yourself as that just because you put the price on it. But one of the things that's really important and a prerequisite to work with me is you actually have to be an expert, because I know my stuff works. So I'm not going to have you out there selling things for $5,000, $10,000, $20,000, and you can't actually deliver the value of that. Ooh. So when you apply to work with me, I'm asking you questions like, how long have you been in your industry? What results have you been able to get for yourself? What results have you been able to get for other people? Because high ticket should align with high value. And we know this industry, it's not always like that. Sometimes people are going to just put a price point on something because they're popular. And then people fall for it. And then they say, well, the coaching industry is scammy. And it's like, well, did you do your research? Did you see testimonials? Did you have a conversation with this person? Or were you just enamored by how rich they looked? Have they made other people rich? And that's just an example, because not all high ticket coaching is based on, helping other people make money. It could be something else. You could pay high ticket for event planners. My event planner, she's high ticket. I pay for it because I see the level of quality of work that she produces with her clients. So you can charge high ticket even if you're not helping people make money, but you have to know what the high value is that you are providing. And so with the messaging, you have to be able to communicate what is the outcome people can expect to receive as a result of working with you. And, I just had a coaching call with my clients the other day, which, to mention, my program is group coaching. It's not one-on-one, but the clients still get results because there is a fear of like, well, what if I want to work with you one-on-one? People think that they need one-on-one. And I'm like, I just can't sit and have a one-on-one conversation with you to answer what 30 other people would ask you on a coaching call.
Right.
So listen to what this person asked me and get coached through that. And when you ask your question, 30 other people are going to need it as well.
Right.
So I say all that to say we were on a group coaching call and I'm reviewing their copy on the call. It's one of my favorite things to do because messaging is, it's my jam. So I'm looking at their messaging, how they're describing their programs. I look how they name their modules, their frameworks that we develop. And I'm like, I have to remind them, name things based on the results or the outcomes that people are looking for, because one of the biggest mistakes is that people prioritize the cute stuff and the clever stuff over just what's clear. Can you clearly tell me what they're going to get as a result of going through module 2 of your course? Name it that versus, the cute alliteration name.
Wow. Noted. Because I love an alliteration.
Now, if you could do both, great, but prioritize value and clarity before the cute and the clever.
Wow, that is so powerful. And I think also when it comes to having these like programs set up, this has to do with funnels, right? Too. Like you have to have a funnel. How did you learn even how to create these things? Because for some reason, as much as I'm learning and taking in, the execution of it is intimidating. Like I don't know how to manage like creating a funnel and sending out the newsletter.
Yeah.
How did you even learn that skill set?
Oh my gosh. Well, first of all, I'm just such a nerd on the computer. So of course, I used to design and build websites, and I used to code, and I've been building websites since I was like 10 years old. So
oh my gosh.
One, I'm a nerd and I love those things. I don't do it for clients because it can be a little bit time consuming to do it for a mass of clients. But I also studied a lot when I was a designer, when I was a web designer, graphic designer. I studied a lot of business experts. I studied a lot of marketing experts, and I recognized that that was one of the things that differentiated me from other creatives. I would see other creatives who were so skilled and talented at their craft of like designing logos, designing websites, all of this. And I was pretty skilled as well, but they neglected studying the skill of selling while I prioritized that. And so I started to look at myself as an entrepreneur and a business owner who had the skill of design versus just looking myself as a designer. Because I'm like, well, I can be a designer and have no clients because I didn't master sales.
Wow.
So I'm like, I need to figure out, why are they marketing in this way? How many emails are they sending a week? Why do they do their subject line like that? What time are they sending out emails? I really loved studying experts. So that's how I kind of figured out those things. And then when you look at funnels, I also think this is kind of a marketing play, but sometimes you'll look at, business coaches, marketing experts, coaches, and they will describe things much more complicated than it really is because they want to sell the solution of, we'll just do it for you. We'll take it off of your hands. Yeah. Right. And funnels can be complicated, but funnels can also be very, very simple. And honestly, especially with high tickets, like the high quality clients, they don't really want to go through a whole funnel. It's like, girl, I saw your ad, I booked a call. Can I get in your program?
Period.
It's very simple. And so when you're thinking about a funnel, your funnel is just simply where people find you, the message that they heard, then they give you, their phone number or they give you their email address. They're giving you contact information so they can hear more from you. You're going to nurture them with emails or text messages or whatever it is, and then you're going to convert them. And everybody converts differently. So my clients primarily convert through virtual events, primarily webinars or challenges, and some of my clients convert through sales calls. It's really just that simple. Wow. And so people can move through your funnel faster, again, depending on where people find you. So let's say you and I are, we're having this interview. Somebody hears this interview who's a woman of faith. Yeah. They're like, I actually have already heard of Maya. I've seen some of her ads, or I've seen her content, or I saw Maya on other platforms that I trust. So the trust is instantly there, which is a great thing. Let people find you in platforms that they already trust. So this is why, you're never going to see me doing an ad on Shade Room or anything. Cause it's not the faith-based coach advertising on Shade Room. There's already a disconnect. Right? It's
already a disconnect.
It's giving, I can't trust you with $10,000. I can't even trust you to promote on the right platform. Exactly. So it's make sure that you are on platforms where trust is already going to be built. Right. And then the messaging that you have on the platform. So somebody sees the title of this episode, how to message your way into six figures. So wow, I know that I need help with messaging. I know that I want to make six figures. They watch the interview and I'm just talking a bunch of nonsense. My messaging matters in this conversation because I'm furthering building that trust. Right. At the end of this episode, you say, well, Maya, how can people hear from you? I say, okay, I have a freebie for you or whatever. They download the freebie. They're getting emails from me and says, hey, if you've ever been interested in working with a coach or you want me to help you have a successful launch, just book a 15-minute, no obligation call with me, whatever it is. They get on the phone with me. They trusted you. They trusted what they heard me say. They downloaded my freebie. It was valuable. They trusted the emails that I sent. They booked the call. The trust is already built. So by the time I'm letting them know about my program, by the time I'm inviting them to work with me, the trust has already been built. And that's essentially what you want to do with your funnel. Your job is to maintain the trust all the way throughout you inviting them to purchase your offer and them saying yes.
Wow. You just laid it out so clearly. And one of the things I love too, how I know you're the real deal is one, you're here and you're on the show. Okay. But also everything you're addressing is so clear and concise. I have had experiences where it's when I'm asking someone a question, I feel like they're giving me these buzzwords and these terms, like you said, because they feel like if they're going to give away too much or whatever the case is. And I was just telling my business partner, I was like, anyone that is truly offering value, they're going to gain people's trust, and people are going to want to invest in them anyway. So you don't have to have this fear of, man, I can't let them know what I'm about to say, how this program starts. You know what I mean? You don't have to worry about that. And you know, I'm kind of curious in general. Have you ever had like mentors in your life to help
absolutely.
you?
Yeah, 100%. In my first business coach, I was, I think, 24 years old. So this is 11 years ago. I'm still close with her now. It was what was it, $12,000, maybe $15,000. I didn't have the money. I had the deposit. And, you know, this comes back to like, well, what do you do if you don't have the money? You figure it out. You figure it out like you figure everything else out. If a MySpace designer, a web designer at 24 years old, I think the deposit was $1,000, maybe $2,000. I had to get money from different bank accounts and put it into one bank account so I can make that deposit. And then I think coaching was maybe about $1,000 every single month. So guess what I did? I made sure that I promoted myself enough to get an extra $1,000 to be able to pay for that coaching. It's like you just figure it out. Like, money is math. It just doesn't have to be that complicated. And I think we just tie so much emotion, and, you know, everybody's relationship or trauma levels with money is different, but it's just like, money is math. Like, sell 2 $500 offers, you know, and get the money you need to pay the coach or whatever it is that you're trying to buy. When I wanted to buy a car, I had the money, or if I didn't have the money, I would have figured it out. When I needed to buy my house and they're like, this is what you need for a down payment. Okay, it's called a savings account. Let me put the money in the savings and then build it up to what I need. So, but I say all that to say, yes, I've had coaches before. I invest probably about $30,000 to $50,000 a year in coaching, and at least probably about, I don't even know, another $50,000 to $100,000 in payroll. I love parting ways with my money to make my life easier. Why would I do it by myself when money is the answer to making my life easier? It's just common sense to me.
Oh, so I love like, you.
I pay my coach to tell me what to do, to tell me how to think, because I want to receive wise counsel. And I think that's where, you know, kind of being in a faith-based space is that, you know, sometimes we just assume, like, I think sometimes we over spiritualize just common practical things. You want to work with somebody, pay them. You want a job, you get paid. You don't expect that you work for free just because you believe that Jesus died on the cross for you. Like, it just doesn't work like that. And so if you want something, the way capitalism here in America works is you pay for it.
Yeah.
And so I love that we're so fortunate and we're so privileged to have access to things where the only thing that could block access is lack of money.
Right.
Like, I'm so fortunate that the only thing keeping me from getting the answers is money. Money is the easiest thing. And so, yeah, I love hiring coaches. I love hiring support because I have no desire to do everything by myself. I feel like my calling is far too big for me to think and to have the ego that I would be doing any of this all by myself.
Wow. No man is an island. And I just love that you said, like, I love parting ways with my money. You know, money is currency at the end of the day, right? It has to flow. You know, you cannot keep it stagnant. And so just knowing too that you consistently make those investments in yourself just shows that you really practice what you preach. You really live this life. And so all the people that I'm finding that I look up to and that I admire, they all have that same advice. And one of the things I actually heard someone that I was just recently introduced to named Carter, he was mentioning something about when there's like an ignorant tax in life.
Yeah.
And then whenever you are looking to invest in something, you have to be mindful that either you pay to learn the lesson, the cheapest way is money.
Yes.
Or life is going to you know, teach you that lesson, and it's going to add interest and tax essentially. 100%. And that really, really resonated with me because it is so true. And oftentimes when it comes to mentorship, like, for the longest time, and I still am, like, I'm like, oh man, I really am looking for like a mentor. And there was one time I signed up for a program, but like, you weren't really getting mentored like by that person specifically. I thought it was going to be more like group coaching with that person specifically, but it doesn't seem like they were really a part of it really at all. So I didn't really understand like the build out, but I was like, man, God, I really want you to send me someone, but I know it has to happen organically and all these different things. So I was always curious as to how other people found their mentors and things like that. Because even for you to still be in contact with the person that you were getting mentored by, you guys have established that connection, even though you did pay, but you guys still have established that connection to keep it going this long. It wasn't really like a one-off type of thing. Yeah. So I was like, God, I'm asking God for him to like send me that person too, because you really need help along the way, because I really am of the belief that no man is an island. And so whenever people say that they're self-made, all these different things, it's like, I don't really think anyone really is truly at their core, because someone has to believe in you at some point, aside from yourself, where you have to,
for sure.
Of course you do things yourself. You do. Yeah. But like when you think about the actual execution of, getting your business off the ground, there are people that you kind of do have to lean, even if it's for advice. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? You kind of have to lean on someone. So I really, really do stand by that. And so just shifting gears here into the faith and confidence and the mindset shifts that lead to more clients and cash. How does faith play a role in building confidence and attracting clients? I know you kind of touched on that briefly with the identity piece, but I want you to kind of lean more into that, because it is so true. We often do not know our identity, and that is a huge issue.
Yeah. I mean, I think faith is huge. I have a belief truly that whatever you believe comes to fruition. It becomes your reality. And I believe that everything happens twice, first in the mind, then in reality. Ooh. And so even when I think about making, that first investment, and people will ask me like, well, were you scared when you made that investment? Or what if it doesn't pan out? Like, what if I give this coach this money and blah, blah, blah. And it's interesting because my mind doesn't necessarily think about it like that. I believe that when I paid my coach, I was investing in myself. And I'll have clients that'll say like, Maya, I wanted to join your program because I wanted to invest in you. And I'm like, you're not investing in me, you're investing in yourself through me. And that is how I look at things when I am investing money. Like when I'm buying stock, like I'm investing in Apple, but I'm investing in myself through that stock or through whatever that company is. And so when I made that investment 11 years ago, and I've made multiple investments with her and a couple other coaches since then, I thought to myself, the first thing is, now I know I'm worth this because I made that investment myself. I don't have to now wonder, would anybody pay me this, or am I actually worth this? Because I literally just made that payment in myself first. Mm-hmm. Like, it's nothing for me to charge $1,000, $5,000, $10,000, $30,000. It's nothing to me because I put that in myself. You know what I mean? So I don't have any of that doubt swirling around in my head. Of
wow.
Like, am I good enough for $10,000? Yeah, you've done it a million times. Like, I've invested $10,000 in myself over and over over the past decade. And so when it comes to faith and building confidence, for me, the confidence comes in the doing, not the sitting around and kind of hoping and will this happen? Will that happen? And the faith and the confidence also comes from knowing who you are. Like, if this doesn't work out for me, I'm not going to then make up a story about like, oh, I must not be a good entrepreneur. It's like, no, girl, it just didn't work out for you. It's this thing called life. Sometimes that might not be your season, or you failed at this, but what is the lesson? And I think for me, I try to really have a perspective of gratitude and looking for the lesson versus a victim mindset of like, this didn't work out for me, or this person scammed me, or whatever it is. Like, I'm connected to the Almighty God. Okay, so everything is working out in my favor, even when it looks like it's not. It's always working in my favor. I'm just not a victim. You just cannot catch me in a situation where even if it appears that it's not working out for me, I know that there's something going on in the spiritual realm where it is working out for me. So that's really that's how my faith operates, where whatever happens in this situation, I'm going to win. So one of the things that I tell my clients is that sometimes where you invest the money is not where you're going to get the return. And so what I mean by that is, fortunately, investing in this coach, it worked out for me. But that instant confidence that I had to know that, okay, now I know for sure you're worth 10,000, 12,000, 15,000. That was what I needed to be able to show up for myself. So let's say I invested this money into this coach and she scammed me and it didn't work out, which again was not the case. I still believe that me putting that money in the belief in myself and what I can produce, that money was going to come back to me anyway. It might not be from her strategies. I would have figured it out anyway. And I know that the return would have been because of how I'm now showing up as a result of making that investment.
Ooh, I
So
love
that's really
that.
important.
That you're amazing. I'm obsessed with you. No. Because that made so much sense to me. Yes, of course, that's where your confidence is going to come from because you know you did it for yourself.
Right.
So you really show up differently when you move like that. I'm kind of curious. Can you share a personal story where your faith has helped you push through tough seasons in business? You posted something on Instagram that I loved, and it was about entrepreneurs. And it was saying, like, when it comes to entrepreneurship, you know, you have to like trust God through like the seasons of like, what was it? I forgot what it was. It was like, you have to trust God, like in the moments where like it can go from like, because being an entrepreneur, it's kind of like you can go 1 minute, it's like you have 100K in your account. The next second, it's $0.
Yeah.
What happened?
Yeah.
You know, and that's like really trusting God is being an entrepreneur. So when you first are starting out in this business and selling high ticketed sales, you know, or high ticketed coaching, like how do you have that drive to continue when you don't necessarily know for certain where the next one's going to come and the next one's going to come and you have bills to pay and you have rent and you have a car note and all these different things? How does that work?
I'm laughing because I think sometimes I'm almost a little bit too delusional. Like I don't often have a panic mode when I maybe should.
Yeah.
You know? And, you know, you said, you know, 1 month you might have 15,000 in your account. Another second, it's you have $10 in your account.
Yeah.
And that second might be the longest second of your life.
Yeah.
Right? And you're just kind of like, man, I have no idea what to do. I mean, what else can you do besides keep showing up? You know, I wish I had a magical answer like, well, just pray and just fast. And of course, absolutely do all of those things. But it's like, I don't know what else you do besides have faith and keep showing up. It's just, I don't know. I wish I could maybe think about an instance where I worried about money. Like I've obviously I've been in business long enough and I have enough people on my team where I've had seasons of like, well, we need money so I can cover payroll. But it's just like, my brain has always been like, well, we're going to get the money. Like I'm showing up, I'm doing the work, I'm being obedient in what I need to do. It's just going to come. And I can't think of a situation where I didn't have it, not because I just had so much surplus, but just because God came through. And I think, and, you know, I've had to make adjustments. I might have said like, hey, you know, I have to move you to part-time, or we need to reduce expenses on however we're moving in the business. So yes, I've had to make smart financial decisions to reduce expenses, but going into panic mode has never served me. You know? So I think thinking clearly, thinking logically, along with having that level of faith is really important. But just going into panic mode, I can't, money is not my master, and I just can't give it enough credit to disturb my peace and to put me into a mode of panic. So for me, I'm just kind of like, God, if you want me to run this business, figure it out.
Right.
Like, that's my relationship with God. Like, if you want me to keep serving women of faith, make sure it's clients that I like.
Period.
Make sure I'm using the right messaging, because it's like, God, I want to be obedient, but let's kind of get on the same page here. So that's kind of
I love that. I love that. So what would you say are some practical tips to take someone from that scarcity mindset? How can they shift from a scarcity mindset to a mindset of abundance, whether that be in starting a business like this and investing in themselves, or even investing in a coach like you?
Yes. I would say the first thing from switching to a lack mindset to an abundant mindset is to look at the world through a lens of privilege. And not enough of us do that. We are so privileged to be able to even hear this podcast right now. I imagine that the majority of the people who are listening, maybe some of them are watching, you're privileged to have eyesight. You're privileged to have Wi-Fi. You're probably watching from a laptop, a computer, or an expensive phone. You're privileged to just whatever your privileges are. Like, I'm privileged to be able-bodied. I'm privileged to be able to know where my next meal is coming from. I'm privileged that I woke up in a bed this morning. I'm privileged that if I'm cold, I can put on a hoodie, or I can grab a blanket, or I can turn on my heater. I am privileged that when I'm hungry, it's because I was too lazy to cook something or order food, not because I'm going without. And so many times we're not looking at the world through a lens of privilege. And so it makes it very hard for us to operate with gratitude and recognize our blessings. And so we're constantly telling God, why don't you give me this? Or I don't have that, or I don't have that. And it's okay to ask God for stuff and ask God for things and ask God for support, but from the lens of, God, please grant me this so I can create something bigger. Or, God, show me what I have right now so I can leverage it. When you don't recognize your blessings, you can't leverage it.
Wow.
You cannot leverage what you have if you don't recognize it and you don't recognize the blessings in it. So shifting from that lack mindset to abundant mindset, it's just shifting your perspective of gratitude and recognizing, yo, I'm able-bodied with Wi-Fi and a laptop. Why wouldn't I be able to make this work? Yeah. It's really the stuff going on in our mind. It's us not renewing our mind. It's us, hanging out in the wrong environments. It's us having proximity to people who are continuing to pour doubt into us and insecurities into us that really actually stops us. It's not the money. It's not that you don't have the new photos. It's not that your website isn't good enough. It's your own mindset. You're not showing up.
Yeah.
If you were showing up as consistently as if you did have the pretty website and the pretty photos and the perfect Instagram, I bet you would start seeing results.
Wow.
So just start showing up consistently.
Wow. I love that. And, we're going to conclude with this question here. What advice do you have for women of faith who struggle with blending, I guess, their spiritual beliefs in with their business strategy? They feel like they have to be this or that. They have to have some sort of label on themselves.
Yeah, I think for women who are really trying to find that balance of, okay, what about my spirituality? How do I mix this with my business? I would say be authentic with it. Don't force anything. People can tell when things are forced. It's tacky, it's weird, and it's hard to keep up with. It's hard to keep up with stuff that's forced, I think, it's interesting being in this faith because there is a higher level of expectations once you tell people that you are a believer. And I think being in this space, you open yourself up to a level of criticism. I have faced criticism as a business coach, as a believer, and it's just kind of like, okay, cool. I may or may not take it. And it's just kind of like, I need to show up as myself anyway, because that's all I know how to do just naturally. And so, I'm going to talk to God about, hey, God, what do you think about this? But you just got to show up. Just be authentic. Let it flow. See what feels right. Trust your Holy Spirit. Work on being more sensitive to the Holy Spirit and being obedient to it. It's very easy to be, disobedient. Sometimes I'd be like, God, I'm not doing that. And he's like, okay, cool, keep playing with me. So I would say just let things happen naturally. I believe that sometimes we are the only Bible that people get to read. And it's like, just show up how you want to represent yourself and how you want to represent your faith and do the best you can.
I love that. And I totally lied. I have one more question, actually. So you mentioned the mindset, and that is so important. But when it comes to your clients too, how do you coach them through imposter syndrome and having self-doubt?
Ooh, I love this. I mean, one of my favorite things, obviously messaging is my expertise, but what precedes messaging is clarity and confidence. And so, of course, I deal with women who struggle with imposter syndrome and can I really call myself an expert? Can I really charge these prices? And one of the things that I have them do is I have them create what I call an I did that receipts list. And I give them this visual of like, when you go to CVS and you buy something and they give you this ridiculously long receipt and it's like, why? About 3 items. And it's funny because in their mind, they're like, I'm not, like, how can I really charge this much? I've only done XYZ. Like, they can't wait to minimize themselves. And I'm like, no, I know you've done more. And I'm like, I need you to create your receipts list where it's a long list of things that you have accomplished in your life. It doesn't even need to be related to your expertise. Just write down everything you've been able to accomplish. You're a mom. You've kept a human being alive. You made a nose. You know what I mean? Like, you made fingers. You made an entire human being and they came out of your body and you kept them alive. Yeah. Let's start with the basics. Let's start with the foundational things. Then let's talk about how long you've been in your industry. You've been able to get a job. You've been able to convince, a company to pay you $85,000 a year for a skill set that you have. Why would you not be able to do the same thing in business? Wow. You've been able to, whatever your expertise is, you've been able to do it for yourself. Let's say you are a weight loss expert. You've been able to lose 50 pounds naturally. You've been able to maintain that weight loss. You've been able to help a couple friends and family do it. And so sometimes I think we associate our value with being what people have paid us to do versus what we've actually just accomplished on our own. And so I'm like, create the I did that receipts list, because you know how we say like, show me the receipts. So I'm like, I need you to be able to have those receipts. So whenever the enemy is trying to plant seeds of doubt in your mind, you could be like, I don't even believe that because I know what I've done. I have the receipts right here.
Oh my gosh, that is so good. Maya, thank you so much for coming on the show. I mean, this is truly going to bless so many people. It really, really blessed me. So many things that you mentioned and shared were just so articulate, so clear. Your messaging, it's clear. There's no fluff, real results. I mean, truly, Maya, where can we find you?
Yeah, so you guys can find me on Instagram at Maya Elious, MayaElious. You did ask me the question about, did I have examples of clients who have switched their messaging? And I didn't get a chance to answer, but hopefully all the other questions that I answered kind of showed what you guys can do with your messaging. If you want to see testimonials, you can go to my company website, Built to Impact, and click on success stories. You will see dozens of them. And if you have direct questions from me on if I can help you create a message to help you make 100K or even millions, I would love to answer it for you.
I love that. And so all of Maya's information will be in the show notes down below so that you guys can get in contact with her. I highly recommend, if you are an aspiring coach and you want to get into this space, definitely hit my girl Maya up, because she knows what she's doing. As you guys can see, she's offered so much, impactful insight, and I'm very energized to see you guys hit her up and work with her. So thank you so much, Maya.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. Okay, with that being said, thank you guys so much for tuning in. Again, I hope you guys have enjoyed this as much as I loved actually sitting down here and filming this with Maya. With that being said, do not forget that I love you and God loves you, and I will speak to you guys in my next podcast episode. Mwah.